for the month of April is April showers. And today's inspirational talk, everyone, the reading, the music, everything has gone so beautiful with it, is about blessed relationships. It may or may not rain in April. But this month we are turning our attention to the April showers of God's blessings. They're always raining through, pouring down upon us, through us, as us, each and every one of us. But first we have to open our hearts, our minds, our very beings to receive those blessings. We're going to explore the blessings that are available to us. But opening our hearts to them in the context of relationships, how we are blessed by our relationships. All, that's the key word there, our relationships. You know, those one-on-one interactions that we have with humankind, with humanity, those kinds of relationships. In his Science of Mind textbook, Dr. Ernest Holmes writes, life is a blessing or a curse according to how we use life. Always a choice, my friends, always a choice. We could also say, then, the relationships are a blessing according to how we use them, or not. Does anyone have relationships that, well, let's just say, they don't exactly feel like blessings? I have one or two, where we don't really feel all that spiritual when we're in the presence of that person or those people. And who among us has really challenging issues around the whole idea of relationships? Because we're always in them, whether you like it or not. So what if, for all those challenging relationships, we constructed bridges instead of walls? What if we built each other up instead of tearing each other down? And what if we formed circles to include rather than fences to keep out? What kind of relationships would we have then? What kind of world would we live in then? If everybody was included in that circle of oneness. We know in spiritual reality that's true. But here on this planet Earth, not so much. Not so much. As I was thinking about this talk, especially the question around forming circles. I love circles. See? Appropriate, yeah? Okay, I'm on camera. Anyway, I can't do this when I'm in my living room with my backdrop and my one-person videoing with two different... I mean, he doesn't even laugh. I'm happy if I can keep him awake. No, seriously, I told you once before he fell asleep right in the middle of my talk. And I'm like, I don't even know how to turn that camera on. But okay, back to relationships. That's a relationship, right? He's not here, I can talk about him. He's usually filming. So what do you want? Okay, here we go. So as I was thinking about circles to include rather than fences to keep out. A limerick came to my mind, but of course I couldn't remember the limerick word for word. So thanks to the miracle of Google, I found it. Google is so cool. I love Google. So this is the limerick. He drew a circle that shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in. We can do this in our lives, in our intimate circles, our larger circles, and the circle of humanity. This earth is a circle at large. So our question this morning, again, is how are we going to move ahead with this? And so here are a few suggestions. The New Testament, God is love. That's what it says in the New Testament. God is love. Nearly, in fact, all the religions of this world will say that same exact thing. God is love. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Love is free from condemnation, even as it is free from fear. Love is a cosmic force whose sweep is irresistible." I love that. A cosmic force whose sweep is irresistible. This is all divine love at this point. And then the author of the Real Love books, Greg Bauer, love is desiring the happiness for the other without regards to what you will get in return. Give freely. Whenever we give of anything, we should give without expectations. Much better off, much happier. You give a gift. Don't expect, especially from your children, don't expect a thank you. Don't wait by the phone for even a text. Just know that you gave. You hope that they received it, but you're just grateful that you can give. And it's the same with peace, with love, with joy. We give it freely, freely. And someone else took this idea just a little bit deeper. Love is the condition in which the happiness of another person is essential to our own. And we're not really talking here about codependency. That's a whole nother talk, issue, whatever. We're talking about really, I mean, you can relate to this. If you are in a family and everyone is feeling included and happy, I mean, you feel better. You feel better. That's the kind of love that we're talking about. And Persian Sufi master Hafiz wrote this: "Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, 'You owe me.'" Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky. Beautiful, 14th century. I understand that kind of love completely at the level of spirit. I think a lot of us, when we've opened up and we've aligned and we've connected with spirit, that divine love, we totally, I mean, especially when we're in meditation or prayer or here at service, we can feel that love is palpable. And it's this love, the only desire of God is to give to that which it creates. And it has created each and every one of us out of itself. So within everyone, whether they show it or not, there is that God spirit, that essence of love. That's what we want to tap into. And the deeper we get in that relationship, the better our earthly relationships then become. Ernest Holmes also wrote, "Love points the way. The law makes it possible." We allow love to guide our lives. We do it from kindness. We do it from a good heart. We do it from that place within us. And it gives us direction. And then the spiritual law, this is like the law of attraction and all those spiritual laws, will give back what is impressed upon it. It's the way it works. Ernest Holmes was brilliant in that one sentence. Love points the way. Law makes it possible. The law is an action. It's an action. Then we might ask, but then how does this apply down here in the trenches, at the human level? We can get some really challenging people in our lives. I've had a couple. Well, Lucy from Charlie Brown put it so beautifully. I love mankind. Wait a minute. I love mankind. It's people I can't stand. So we can be a humanitarian, but it's that one-on-one, that interconnection with all people. Scripture I quoted a moment ago also has a phrase that comes before it. "He who loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love." It is love. We say it all the time. Do we mean it? Do we know what that means? Do we feel it? I mean, we're not going to feel this. I'll speak for myself. I'm not going to feel this like 100% of the time. Anyone that's been in a car knows that about me. But I have learned to return to center a whole lot quicker. I have really gotten, and I bless, I bless everyone. Everyone's a blessing in our lives, whether we accept that or not. So now that we've kind of defined love, to me, love is really respect. That's what, all the years I try to figure out, what is love? What is love? Because as a child, I was told there's no such thing as love. And so I didn't really know what love was. But then, after meditating on it, I came to that one word. For me, it works. You can find your words, but it's respect. You really respect someone, you're going to treat them in a certain manner, the way that you would treat yourself. And first, it will always begin with self-respect anyway. You can't give away what you don't have. Someone once said, love is not for lazy persons. That's for sure. To exist in its fullness, sometimes it demands very precise and strong gestures. Well, I want to give you 5 gestures here today. And be prepared to have your relationships blessed with these 5 gestures. Look at allowing love to point the way so that the Lord can make it possible. Looking at that, I chose these 5 ideas, and they're based on the word circle. And for anyone here, if you spell circle, it has 6 letters. But I'm gonna make it into 5. So we're gonna do a 5 acronym here, 5-part. So the first C is for compassion. Having an understanding and empathy for another person's feelings and experiences. Being judgmental, being compassionate means to listen without judgment, without analyzing, or without trying to fix. We can't fix anything, right? We can know the spiritual truth about anyone or anything. We can't fix things. So in our minds, we need to realize we don't have to fix anyone. Mostly people just want you to listen. They just want to be heard. How many of us? Now, this whole year, for many, was a great example of, wow, what do I do now? Because we're so used to doing, moving, and talking, and doing everything else. We had to go within, a lot of us. We had to contemplate, we had to meditate. I mean, we had to really start listening. And what I've really noticed is so many changes in so many people's lives have taken place during this past year because they had to stop and realize what is important to me. I'll tell you one thing that became very apparent to me was because I could have had a place in Florida and a place up here, or a place wherever and a place here. But it became so apparent to me, it was like Spirit directs my life anyway. That's the way I've always lived it. And it was like, you're not going anywhere. You're staying right here. You can go visit, but you're coming back. So I'm not ready to leave, but a lot of people have made that decision to retire, to try new options in life. Hey, our Dolly, she's off traveling the country in her big RV because she decided to travel the world. And there's a lot of people like that. They bought RVs, gave up their homes, and they're just traveling, living life. So anyway, I don't know what that has to do with compassion, but this was the year to really listen. That's what it has to do. Being compassionate means to look at every act and try to understand it better. Being compassionate means that I am looking at each and every person's action as a call for love, whether it seems loving or not, because that's what's at the bottom of all of it. And there's this, I have 2 stories today. There's this tribe in Africa that believes that every single soul has its own vibration, which we believe too, its own harmony, in fact, its own song, which expresses its unique flavor and purpose. So when a woman finds out that she's pregnant, she goes out into the wilderness with a few friends, and together they pray and meditate until they hear the song of the child. And then they all return to it. They begin to sing it out loud. So each person has a song in this tribe. How cool is that? And then when they return to the town, they teach everyone the words to this, not the words, there are no words, the song itself. And when a child is born, the song is sung. When a child starts education, the song is sung. When the child passes through initiation into adulthood or into marriage, this song is sung. In fact, at any significant transition in the person's life, included when their soul is ready to leave, this song is then sung. Now here's where the compassion comes in. And there's one other occasion which the villagers gathered to sing the person's song. If at any time in their life the person commits a crime or an aberrant social act, the person is called to the center of the village, and the people in the community form a circle around them. And then all the villagers sing their song to them all at once. You see, this tribe does not punish antisocial behavior. It's not punishable. It is love and the remembrance of identity. And I would say that is compassion personified. How beautiful is that? And then we have I and R, which I'm going to save for the end. And we move on to the next C. Commit to yes only when you really mean it. This is a big one for a lot of people. Clarify the confusion of the idea that being loving means that you have to say yes to everything. If you can't say it with pure desire for them to be happy, then you are not really being loving. You do not really have their happiness in mind. So you go deeper into why you are saying yes. Are you saying yes to keep the peace? From preventing somebody from being upset or disappointed in you? So that you look good in someone else's eyes? Or so that someone won't stop loving you and then they'll leave you? And I say to that, how does that work for you? It doesn't. We need that loving no, that loving no. If so, then you really don't have their best interest in heart. Have it into yourself where you have this loving, this unconditional, loving yes, or it can be a no. And here's a little hint why relationships often go downhill. You keep giving and giving and giving and giving, but it never seems to be enough. Anyone ever had that experience? Well, it's like feeding a hungry person chocolate. And you keep feeding them chocolate, and you keep feeding them chocolate, and they are never, ever satisfied. It is because they needed some substance. They needed food, so a no would have sufficed right in there. Because ultimately, you're not going to satisfy their hunger. Not in that way. And finally, you say, exhausted and completely wiped out of chocolate, I just can't give it anymore. I've given all I have. And you never gave them the one thing that they really and truly needed, and that was love, the real love. It is more loving to say no than it is to say yes and not really mean it. So this C is to commit to saying yes only if you can do it from a real deep sense within you. And you know, that reminds me of, and I thought about these two words again this morning actually. When many years ago, one of my sons, I had to ask him to leave the house. Just, you have an hour, pack your bag, and you have to leave. This had to do with addiction, had to do with mental challenges. But it was the toughest thing I ever did, but that was a loving no. And then I understood this morning why they call it tough love. Tough love, because it is so hard, but it is the most loving thing to do. And you know, just recently, after like 18 years or so, he said, I gotta tell you, that was the best thing you ever did for me. I had a spiritual awakening at that point. So I was saying yes. Yes, Mommy's gonna fix it. Sure, Mommy's gonna fix everything. No. So that loving no was more important and showed how much I love that person than just saying yes. Sure, you can stay. So that brings us to the next letter, E. Expand your thinking. Expand your thinking from I am right to I am willing to listen and to understand. And of course, this is extreme. I could be wrong about something. That's the beauty of growing older. You realize it doesn't matter if I'm wrong. It doesn't matter. I'm probably wrong half the time. You know, but we believe that we're right. And it is so important sometimes to be right. So we're saying right here and right now that would I rather be loving or right? Would I rather be loving or right? I don't even care if I'm right most of the time anymore. And here's a $1 million question. That's the $1 million question. Would I rather be loving or right? When you expand your thinking from I must be right, you widen that circle. You expand the circle. You can see how that would happen. From defending to dialoguing. Defending is a struggle of opinions and viewpoints, right? There's always a struggle to defend. You gotta get, everybody gets their phone out to Google to see who is, now you can look it up immediately. Instant gratification, I'm right, see, I'm right. But dialoguing opens up everything. It opens it up. It opens up understanding and sharing to a point that you just close it off when you're right. I'm right, you're wrong. Someone's going to be wrong. So ask yourself, would I rather be right or loving? And remember, it's only the loving answer that will bring true happiness. Because, I mean, so what if you're right? Usually someone else feels bad, and you might feel temporarily better, but you don't really feel better. It's not loving. It's not loving. So before going to I and R, which I'm going to put together, let me summarize. We have compassion. The first C is compassion. I and R we're doing next. The other C is committing to saying a loving yes or a loving no. L is letting go of expectations. And E is expanding your thinking. Expanding your thinking from I have to be right. So the I and the R, I have another story in here to finish this off because it's just so good. I've saved these to the last because they are the biggest. I and R, I am responsible. I'm responsible. Not in blaming or a negative way at all, but the fundamental belief of science of mind is that we are responsible for our own experiences. We're not responsible for anyone else's, but in this context, there's a story which shows us maybe we are, if we're experiencing it, if we're in the presence, if we're in that relationship, or those people, we know these people or don't know them. 2 years ago, I heard about, this is written by Joe Vitale. So if you've seen the movie The Secret, you know who Joe Vitale is. He's written many books. So it's written in the first person. So I'm going to read it as he wrote it. 2 years ago, I heard about a therapist in Hawaii who cured a complete board of criminally insane patients without ever seeing any of them. This psychologist would study the it's not an inmate, would study the patient's chart and then look within himself to see how he created that person's illness. And as he healed himself, the patient healed. When I first heard this story, I thought it was an urban legend. This is Joe Vitale. How could anyone heal anyone else by healing himself? How could even the best self-improvement master cure the criminally insane? It didn't make any sense. It wasn't logical, so I dismissed the story. However, I heard it again a year later. I heard that the therapist used a Hawaiian healing process called, and many of you have heard this, Ho'oponopono, which means taking total responsibility. I had never heard of it, yet I could not let it out of my mind. The story was, if this story was at all true, I had to know more. The Hawaiian therapist who healed those mentally ill people would teach me an advanced new perspective about total responsibility. His name, as many of you know, is Dr. Hugh Len. We probably spent an hour on the phone. I asked him to tell me the complete story of his work as a therapist. He explained that he worked at the Hawaiian State Hospital for 4 years. The ward where they kept the criminally insane was very dangerous. Psychologists quit on a monthly basis. They started calling in sick or simply quit. People would walk through the ward with their backs to the wall, afraid of being attacked by the patients. It was not a pleasant place to live, work, or visit. Dr. Len told me that he never saw the patients physically. He agreed to have an office and to view their files. While he looked at those files, he would work on himself. As he worked on himself, patients began to heal. This is a real story, my friends. This is a real story. After a few months, the patients that had to be shackled were allowed to walk freely. He told me others who had to be heavily medicated were taken off their medications. And those who had no chance of ever being released were being freed. I was in awe. Not only that, he went on, but the staff began to enjoy coming to work. Absenteeism and the turnover disappeared. We ended up with more staff than we needed because the patients were being released. And all the staff were showing up to work on that day until the ward was closed. This is where I had to ask the other million-dollar question. What were you doing with yourself that caused those people to change? I was simply healing the part of me that created them. I didn't understand. Dr. Len explained the total responsibility for your life means that everything in your life, simply because it is in your life, is your responsibility. In a literal sense, the entire world is your creation. This was kind of tough to swallow. Being responsible for what I say or do is one thing, right? We all do that. But being responsible for what everyone in my life says or does is quite another. I know this is tough to grasp, Joe writes, to let alone accept or actually live. Blame is far easier than total responsibility. But as I spoke with Dr. Len, I began to realize that healing for him and in the Ho'oponopono practice means loving yourself. Loving yourself. If you want to improve your life, you have to heal your life. If you want to cure anyone, you have to, even a mentally a mentally ill criminal. You have to do it within yourself. I asked Dr. Len how he went about healing himself. What was he doing exactly? And he looked at those patients' files and he said, I kept saying, I'm sorry, I love you, over and over again. I'm sorry, I love you. I'm sorry, I love you. And I didn't say it to anyone in particular. I was simply evoking the spirit of love to heal within me what was creating the outer circumstances, he explained. That's it, Joe Vitale said. That's it, Dr. Hughes said. Whenever you want to improve any situation in your life, there is only one place to live. This can be very challenging, but it's what this man did. And the outcome is in books. I mean, this is real. I mean, this is really to the extreme of if we are all love, and God is all love, then if we could ever get to that place of truly loving all people, no matter what, then we would be healed and this planet would be healed. Of course, in Miracles talks about it all the time. We have to forgive. We have to let go. And everything has to come from this place within us that is divine love itself. So this talk isn't about all of us turning into this incredible, it would be wonderful, loving essence all of the time. But it is to remind us that we really, really need more love in this world, in our lives, in our families, in society. We need more love. And so any kind of act of kindness is an act of love. Any activity where you're giving of yourself is an act of love. I say that it's about time that we start really focusing more on loving than being right, than blaming, than all the other stuff. Because we see what all the other stuff has led us. More of the same. The law of attraction is always working. More of the same. And so, it's a long talk today, but I thought it was an important one. So I am saying that when we practice this, we will enjoy more and more blessed relationships. Thank you.